So, like I always do, I'm just going to wait about 3 minutes to see who pops up before we get started. And the funny thing is, I just remembered I forgot to post again today that I was going live. And like I had the reel ready to go, it was saved in my drafts, but oh well. Hopefully, everyone will get the notification and just forgive me. I get so distracted. And yeah, I'm sorry. So, we're just going to wait a little while. Hello. We got one person in. So I'm trying to see if I can post a reel that I forgot to post. I hope it's still saved in my drafts. Mm, Probably not, because I'm on the mobile version of it now. And the phone that I'm on live with, that's the one where I have the app. So probably won't be able to get to it, but that's okay. So yeah, the more you talk to me, you will learn little quirks about me, and my short-term memory is horrible. And the funny part is that that has a lot to do with what I'm going to talk about tonight about letting go of the past. My long term memory is very intact, very much so. And to me, it's a blessing and a curse because, of course, I'm always going to have memories that make me smile, memories that are just going to cheer me up if I'm having a bad day. But in the past, some memories have kept me in a very dark place. And that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. So I feel like it's all tied in together, and it is 7:03, and I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So, if you are joining me tonight, hello. If you are watching me on the replay, hello to you too. And I didn't do this video 2 weeks ago because I was still going through what I'm about to talk about, and I didn't realize at the time that everything was still as fresh as it was. And when I tell you it was fresh, I had very raw emotions. And at the time, like I would cry off and on, but it wasn't to the extent to where like I just felt like I was in this pit of despair. It was just me just processing what I felt. And it's a very natural thing to just process what you feel. Don't feel as if you have to run from your emotions. Like they're yours. They're there for a reason. And it's important for you to become comfortable in feeling what you feel. So I was able to cry and see that as a release and then just figure out, okay, so what do I need to do differently going forward? And what had happened was that I realized that in a lot of different situations, I have been a toxic person. And I did not know that in the past because, of course, it would be easy for other people to be the problem. Hi, Lawanda. My sister's here. Hey. So, so, now I got to get back in my train of thought. Got distracted for a second. So, in me realizing that I had been a toxic person in a lot of situations, that was a very hard pill to swallow. And I just had to sit there with it. It's like, okay, you don't like it, so what? You're the person who created this. So you have to sit there with it. And in being that person, like you don't realize how toxic you are. Like you don't realize the pain that you're putting on other people. You don't realize how you're making it difficult for people to even be around you. And I didn't want to be that person anymore. It's like, who wants to be that person? Especially when you know that you naturally are like a very happy person and you're kind hearted, but You just allow things that you haven't let go of to just take you over in a lot of ways. And with me, that's what had happened. I was allowing my circumstances to control me. It was as if I didn't have control over my circumstances. And I've been spending a lot of time just trying to figure out, like, okay, so where did this come from? My sister says she's sorry for the distraction. It's no problem. But she knows how I am. Like, she has to get me back on track a lot of the times. But in me trying to figure out exactly where all of this came from, which I can probably trace it back to probably elementary school or something. But I know for a fact, like around the age of like 11 or 12, I had this idea in my head that I was going to be in this penthouse somewhere. It was going to be overlooking the city view, and I was going to have all white furniture. I was going to be wearing all these designer suits with this designer briefcase, and probably working for a major corporation as an editor or something, which is funny because I'm an editor now. Like, I just didn't expect to be it in the way that I am. And I felt that, like, okay, so whoever I'm with, we're either going to be already married by the time I'm 24, or we are going to be engaged. And whenever I walk through the door, he's going to know, like, I need all of his attention. And if he has any company, it's like, y'all got to go because my baby's here and I got to put all my attention on her. And I didn't realize it at the time because, again, I'm a kid. But that was a very self fulfilling expectation for my future to have it at a specific age and for everything to just be about me, me, me. And the crazy thing about that is by the time that I got to 24, which was in 2014, that wasn't my reality at all. It was nowhere near it. Unfortunately, by the time I was 24, I was isolated from just about the whole entire world. And it started really in 2009. And at that time, it was a major family issue that was going on that led to me being estranged from my family for a long time. And even the family that I still had relationships with, it was very strained. And I argued with people a lot. It was very difficult for me to have conversations with people. So my solution was just to avoid being around people. If I'm not around people, then there's absolutely no one here for me to argue with. So that's what I did. And even with me being in college at the time, I use that as an outlet. It's like, okay, the more I stay here, I don't have to go back home. And even when I would be at home, it's like I would literally like hide. Like I would always be nervous whenever I was out in public because I didn't want to run into people that I knew. Because I felt that they would want to know what happened, why was this and why was that, and I just did not want to deal with that. And going further down the line, a lot of other things started to happen. So after that incident happened, I started cutting off friends. And the first one I cut off, it was like, okay, maybe she never really was. But then 3 years later, I started to see things a little different. Not at the time, though, but I did the same thing to another friend. And at the time, I was like, well, she's acting very similar to this other person, bringing up the past. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna just leave her there. And after that incident, it was more people that I felt that way about. And instead of me actually dealing with all these residual feelings that I had about the past, I just felt anything and anybody who had anything to do with my past, I felt as if I need to just leave them there. I don't need to bring them with me. So toward the end of 2012, I was continuously just avoiding people. And I didn't tell people directly that, okay, I don't feel as if I should continue to have a relationship with you. I just stopped talking to them. I ghosted them. And I may have mentioned this before, but it's like I'm just not realizing that's a toxic behavior. So thank you for all the people who were putting those memes out on Instagram to remind me of that because now I know. At the time, I felt I was doing what I had to do for me. Again, being very selfish, not looking at like, well, you could have had a conversation with these people to resolve all your issues. I wasn't feeling that. So after that, 2013 hit, and when I tell y'all, like, that was one of the hardest years. I thought 2009 was a very hard year, but this one, it really was very difficult. So, one of the people that I decided to no longer have a friendship with, he died unexpectedly at the age of 21. And of course, I didn't expect that to happen because who would? And the crazy thing about it, and this happens with anybody regardless of the circumstances, as soon as a person dies, your mind always goes back to what you could have done, what you should have done, what you would have done had this not been a factor. And he reached out to me about 6 months before he died. And because that was right at the time that I was starting to cut people off, I didn't answer the phone. And the crazy thing about it, he sent me a message on Facebook. I didn't respond to that. I logged off. He called me. I didn't answer. He called me again. I had three chances to answer the phone, and that's not counting how many times he called me before. But I was like, nope, 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 nope. I'm not gonna break. I ain't gonna do it. And of course, like as soon as I heard that he had died, it was like, what? Like what you mean? And it was like very, very, very difficult for me to process, as any death would be. But especially one like to where it's a friend, because I had never experienced that before. Of course, like I dealt with the loss of family members, but it's like, what do you do when it's a friend? Then a friend that you really haven't been that great of a friend to. So it was very, very difficult. And that night I had a dream that he had just gotten into an accident. He was in the hospital. I talked to him on the phone. He was fine. But when I tell y'all, like, when I woke up and realized that it was just a dream and that he really was not there, like, it was hard for me to recover from that. And I struggled so much that I had to take an incomplete in my classes that semester. I was in grad school at the time. I couldn't concentrate. I could not focus. And at that time, he haunted me. When I tell you, he literally haunted me in my dreams. But that wasn't him, it was my guilt. Because what I did not mention was that I was involved in a situationship, even though I didn't know it to be that at the time. But the person I was involved with was his cousin. And that's who actually told me that he had died. And because I was in such a negative mindset at the time, I'm like, well, now we have a shared loss. So it's like, of course I need to keep him around. Nah, because that was another situation that was not healthy for me at all. And the only reason why I was in that situation was because I still had not yet dealt with the residual feelings I still had left over for Bay. So if you ever hear me say Bay, it's the same person, So that story will come later because it's a very long one. But what was the beginning of the end of that situationship? It wasn't my friend's death as I thought it would have been, because it's like, okay, so maybe this is a sign that maybe I should just back away from people completely, but it just drew me closer to him in a very unhealthy way. But what really, like I said, like began to descend of that relationship is when I found out that Bay had gotten arrested. And I had talked to him, according to him, like the exact night that he got arrested. That was the last time we spoke on the phone. And we would take breaks in between speaking to each other, but it wouldn't be as long as it was then. Like it was months I had not heard from him. I didn't know what happened to him. And of course, because I was already dealing with the loss of my friend, I'm thinking the worst. Like something's happened to him and I don't know. And it's like, well, who would tell me? And after feeling low one day because of the situation with this other dude, that's when I got the revelation to Google Bay's name, and that's when I found out what happened. And it's like that opened up yet another book of guilt. Well, maybe if this would have happened, that should have happened, that could have happened, maybe this would not have happened. And the thing with him, like, he had been the source of a lot of shoulda, woulda, couldas in my life. Like, going back to when we were teenagers, thinking that, well, maybe if we would have just, went for a relationship when we were younger, we wouldn't be apart now. And, like, just playing all these scenarios in my mind. And keep in mind, this is still 2013, and I'm still not done. So, the last major blow was that I was coming to terms with the fact that I was entering the last months of my grandmother's life. And that was another hard pill to swallow. Because 2009, like I said, that was when I first went through a major shift and change with my family. That's when my grandmother first got seriously ill. But she made it through that one. But this time it was becoming apparent that she may not make it through it. And I took that really, really hard. And what's crazy is that, like, I took hearing that she was nearing the end of her life worse than when she actually died. And it's like, I think that maybe, like, I just got it all out at that time because of everything that was going on. Like, I was used to crying. During my years in grad school, like, that's all I did. And I tell people all the time, it's like, I still don't know, like, how I got through. And I know it was nothing but the grace of God, because it's like, I really was not there a lot of the times. It's like I was there physically, but mentally and emotionally, I was checked out completely. So going into 2014, like I said, here I am. After all this loss has happened, and even after that, it's like I still was separated from my family. And it's like, even though you're with people, you still physically, like, feel disconnected, like that's a very miserable and like horrible feeling. So again, I just felt like I was alone, because physically, yes, I was, but it's like I just felt like it's just me. It's just me. Not realizing that it was things that I had done that had led to me just being there by myself. And I thought that, okay, so maybe I've been through the worst of everything. No, no, that was just the beginning. So in 2014, I mentioned this before, I think, in the Fear of Success video. So I left my job because it was going absolutely nowhere, and I thought all these opportunities are going to open up for me. They didn't. They didn't. And I submitted application after application, still nothing. Nothing at all. And at the time, I didn't advocate for myself the way that I do now because, again, you feel as if certain things should be a certain way. You go in with certain expectations, not realizing that they're unrealistic and that what I was going after wasn't for me in the first place. But having to deal with the fact that there's no money coming in, but I still have bills to pay. It's like that allowed me to sink into an even deeper state of despair because I'm like, okay, so I just came out of dealing with all this stuff, but it's like here I am again. And it's like within this time frame, I had reconnected with Babe, but because I was still stuck on bringing up stuff that had happened years ago, that didn't go too far. So it's like here we are again, not speaking to each other. So again, it's just me again. And it's like having to come to the conclusion that it's like, well, you're going to have to either figure out how you're going to keep this apartment going because I was still living in an apartment at the time, or like leave it. But I was just dead set, like, I can't leave. And even though I do know, like, I needed to stay to figure out other parts of my life, I still think part of me staying was me trying to prove things to other people. I still was stuck on that. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but my ego was a mess at the time. It was a mess. But pride comes before the fall. Did not know it at the time. And once I got down to like absolutely almost no money, it was like, okay, something's gonna have to shake. And that's when I got the ideas to start writing and editing, not realizing that was the natural progression anyway. But I just saw that as the side hustle. Like, this isn't what I'm really supposed to be doing. And it's like, I just saw that as like, this is just me, something was left over. Not realizing that it's like me trying to go the practical route. That was me just settling. And God was so gracious enough to still, even in the midst of my mess, to allow me to still be able to do the things that I always wanted to do, but I forgot about because I was so stuck on this idea that I had in my head that life was supposed to be a certain way. And after enduring year after year and year of that, when I tell you, like, it was multiple years of me going through the same thing, and I see this post on Instagram all the time, like, if you keep experiencing the same thing, you still have not learned your lesson. So from 2015, probably, I would say last year. Money was always an issue because, okay, so I'm already not making that much because it's like I'm literally starting with zero. But then here are all these other extra expenses. And then when I finally got a chance to make things right with Babe, here comes another expense. Because, like I mentioned, he was locked up at the time. And of course, it's like I would sit there and I would wonder, it's like my life wasn't supposed to be like this. It's like, why did this happen to me? And it's like I felt like I had done everything the right way. And, growing up, I wasn't that bad of a kid. Like, I probably was not bad at all, you know. So I'm thinking it's like, man, I did all this stuff, right? I was trying to do things the right way. It was a lot of things that I could have done, but chose not to do because I was overly conscious about how other people would see me. So I'm thinking there's absolutely no reason why I should even be in this predicament, like at all. And because I felt that way, I projected that onto every single person around me. I didn't care if you were my mama, my sister, my man, whoever you are. It's like, I just feel like all of y'all played a part in me being here instead of just taking accountability for what I allowed myself to create. Like, it was my mess that I created. And the crazy thing about it is that here now, I'm realizing that all the times that I was angry, I was upset, I may have felt depressed, it's like I was really just grieving the loss of being in control. I wasn't in control of my circumstances. But the funny thing is, it was just certain parts of my experience that I wasn't able to control. But it still was a lot of other things that I could have controlled. But I was so fixated on the things that I could not control that it became an obsession. And when I tell y'all, like, it became an obsession, I would wake up at the same exact time every single night, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And all these thoughts would just flood my brain. And like when I tell you, like this would lead to hours of me ruminating over these thoughts. Hours. Like I would sleep well in the first few hours of the night, but as soon as I was up, I was up. And a lot of mornings I would wake up tired and groggy because of all the stuff I had been thinking the night before. And I would carry that with me into my day. So of course I'm not that pleasant of a person because I'm carrying around all this negative energy from the past. But what would always like come like crashing down on me and would be a very harsh reality for me to accept is when I had the thought that, okay, so it happened and there was absolutely nothing that you could do about it. And that hurt worse than whatever it was that happened because I think that I was holding on to like, well, if I just try to figure out a way that I could have changed it and just try to play out a scenario that would not have been as bad, like, well, maybe I can somehow tap into the past and like really just, some kind of way change it. But it's like there's absolutely positively no way to change any of that. Like it happened. It's over and it's done with. And instead of me just accepting that for what it was and moving on, it's like I just could not let it go. Because it's like, no, this is not how life was supposed to be. And I'm not going to accept that. So even though I was able to get to a point to where it's like, okay, I'm tired. I'm very tired. I still wasn't tired enough. So I worked hard enough to get rid of the old baggage. But all I did was just clear out room to put new baggage. So yeah, I wasn't ruminating over the things that happened 10 years ago, but now I'm ruminating on the things that happened 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago. So still repeating the same toxic behaviors. And because I'm upset, everyone around me is picking up on that energy. And I'm thinking that because I can't get on the phone without there being some kind of argument or some kind of disagreement, I'm thinking it's the other person. But it's me. And it's like if you look around and you see the same thing that's happening everywhere you are, it is you. It is you. I clearly remember one time, like, I was unaware of what was going on with me. And it was like I felt like I couldn't talk to anybody. And everybody just had to give me a break. And I'm thinking, like, okay, this would be a good time to reset. But over time, the same thing happened. That's because the issue was me. It was not them. Like they can give me all the breaks in the world, but it wasn't until like I really just decided to deal with myself that I was able to come out of that space. And what I started doing was praying more, meditating more, reading more. I started to get physical again because I had slacked off from it years ago. And at the time it worked, but then 2020 happened. And I didn't think that I was as affected by everything that was going on as I was, but I definitely was. And because it really didn't take much for me to get triggered, yeah, the pandemic was a catalyst for a lot of things that were still unresolved. So, in addition to still trying to manage relationships, friendships, your family relationships, which were on the mend at this point, much better than they had been in the past, like, it still was a lot. And you have to deal with all of this while the world is just burning down around you. And it's like, how can you even function in that? But of course, I tried to keep pushing through it. But, you can only put on for so much before it's like everything just overwhelms you. And I think what definitely did it for me, because it was a lot of changes that were going on with me. So, like I mentioned, you got to deal with the pandemic. Then a lot of things were changing for me in business. So it's like now I'm finally getting the type of work that I've always wanted to get, attracting the type of clients I've always wanted to attract. But now I have to do more. And then in relationships, it's like, okay, so a lot of changes are coming. So now I have to do more. And I made the decision to move back home because I felt like I had been fighting that for so long. And it's like, well, that could free you up from a lot. But as soon as I did it, as soon as I got here, there was a family issue that happened. And it's like, you have got to be kidding me. Like, I could not believe it because it was like a matter of like 4 or 5 days after my move. So it's like I'm already physically exhausted. But now it's like you want me to process this? It's like it was just entirely too much. And I tried to keep going and functioning like I was okay, but in December it got me. And the holidays were always difficult for me, and that was one of my prime times from ruminating over the past because you think that your holidays should be a certain way when you have loved ones, but it just wasn't that for me. And for years, I had let the Grinch come and steal Christmas. But, I tried not to focus on it, but it got me. It did. And that's when I felt the most isolated I had ever felt in a long time. Because, like I told you, I had worked through certain things, but not everything. And it led me to realize, like, okay, so I got to get rid of something. Just like I did years ago when I decided to cut people off from my past. So I decided to end my relationship prematurely. And at the time, I felt like I needed to do it. I needed to be strong enough to do it. I needed to be strong enough to walk away from me. But again, it was just me being selfish. Me not considering this other person's feelings. Me not feeling as if I could talk to this person about what I'm experiencing. And again, it was me feeling out of control. I don't like the fact that I cannot control this situation, that it's not going the way that I want it to go. And it was not until 2 weeks ago that I was able to realize that. And I went through all of January, February, thinking that it's like, okay, so I can see we're getting closer to rebuilding, we're fine. But it was like in March, I realized, like, wait a minute, wait a minute. Like, none of that even had to happen. None of it even had to happen. Had I just been willing to accept the fact that it's like, I just don't like this feeling of being out of control. Like, I don't like it. I want to be able to control not feeling lonely or feeling sad or feeling disappointed, feeling hurt, but I can't. So after that, that's when I decided, like, I am making a conscious decision, very conscious decision. Like, I'm not going to let some of the past go. I have to let all of it go. And one of the main things that help me now is like, I have to tell myself that thoughts are not important. So if thoughts from the past trickle in, that's not important. Or like, okay, so what? That doesn't mean anything. It's like, so what if it happened? Okay, and that's nice. Like, that's how I have to talk to my thoughts. Because the things that pop up in your subconscious mind, you can't help it. Anything that you've ever seen, heard, experienced, it's in your subconscious. So it's going to be there. But you don't have to let it affect you and your emotions and your behavior because all of that is intertwined. So that's one way that I do it. And in addition to the morning routine that I told you guys about, I've added more to it. I have a list of things that I'm grateful for that I read over every morning. I have a list of I am statements that I read over every morning. And I've even included more things for me to read and things for me to do because it's like I have to keep my mind focused on where I am. And if I find myself drifting too far and those thoughts don't get me back on track, I tell myself we're in 2021. We're not in 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2018, 2019, 2020. We're in 2021. So in doing that, that helps bring me back to where I am now and allow me to focus on what's most important. And what's most important to me is being healthy, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. Because if I'm not healthy, anybody who comes in contact with me isn't going to be healthy either. And that's what makes situations toxic. So I realized, like, I'm done being that toxic person. That's not me anymore. I don't want that. That's not me. But who I am going to be going forward is someone who is grateful for where she is in the present and someone who's hopeful for where she's going in the future. And the only thing that the past can do for me is just remind me that I'm exactly where I need to be right now. Like, it doesn't serve a purpose. It can't do absolutely positively anything for me. And all the stuff that it did do in the past was not helpful, which is why I refuse to let it continue to creep into my life right now. So I know that might have been a lot of information. Let me check the time. Yeah. So it's 7:29. So, and I think this is the longest that I probably have talked because it was a lot to get through, but I really just needed to get that out. And even with me admitting some of the things that I admitted, like, some of my family doesn't even know these things, but if they watch this video, they're definitely going to know. And I just want to be free from it. Like, I don't want to be held in like this place of shame, feeling like I can't talk about my experiences because feeling like I could not share and get it out is what allowed me to harbor all of those feelings from the past and continue to bring them into whatever was going on with me in the present. But like I said, I've let that go. I'm letting that go. Okay? It doesn't do anything for me. And I hope that you're able to get something out of this too. And if you are struggling with letting things go in the past, like, just take time to process it. Don't see it as like I should be here or I should have done this, should have done that. Just accept what you feel. Learn to process it and understand it. And the main thing about us not letting go of the past is not wanting to accept the loss. And whether that's the physical loss of a person, jobs, relationships, opportunities, just grieve. Allow yourself time to grieve. But in grieving, know that you have to come to a certain point of awareness and acceptance so that you can learn how to cope in healthy ways. Because again, life is filled with disappointments and hurts and losses, and there's absolutely nothing we can do to stop them. But you have everything in your power to control how you react to it. So, I hope that that helps someone, and I thank you guys for listening to my video. And the goal is for me to come back in 2 more weeks. I got to look at my list of topics to see what I'm going to talk about next. But talking about body image has been really heavy on my heart lately because that's another journey that spans years. That's taken me a long time to get rid of. So that might be up next on the list, and I'm going to have a special guest to talk about that too. So I'm really excited for that. And if you guys have any questions for me about anything that I talked about, or just questions you just want to ask me in general, if you just want to talk about things that are going on with you now, like feel free to comment under this video. But if you don't want people all in your business, you can DM me. And if you're curious about what I do business wise, feel free to click the link in the bio, take a look around, go to the website. If you want to, go ahead and book with me or request a quote. Also, check out that YouTube channel, because I have a lot of nuggets there, and not just the personal channel, but also the business channel. And like I mentioned in a previous video, I recently released a new ebook. So if you're curious about how to write a book and save money, make sure that you download that. And I also have other things that are going to be coming up pretty soon. So I hope that you guys are following me and that you have your notifications turned on so that you'll know whenever I do videos like this or whenever I have other announcements. So, thank you all again for tuning in, and I will see you guys in 2 weeks. And I know y'all can probably tell my voice is probably shot, but I was on the phone before I got on the live video. So, I'm about to go drink some water and chill for the rest of the night. And I hope that you guys do the same. And I hope you have an amazing rest of the week. And I will see you guys soon. Bye.